Hey, this is Brendan.
I'm Wet. Welcome to VOC Fallow Deer.
Yeah. This upcoming video, I want to cover why we have to sedate animals, kind of how we do it, what we use, what to do to know that things are going well or going right, and also what to do and how to determine when something is going wrong, what to do about that. If you're into the technical stuff and you want to learn more about animal sedation, this will be the video for you. Stick around. So if you don't have any interest in that, you just want to see pictures of deer running around, just go hit the like button below the video and then move on to a different video. But I've had a bunch of people over the last year or two, not that I'm an expert, but in conversation they would talk about what we do for sedation and why and what we use and how we handle it. And not that I'm an expert, because I'm not, but I've experienced a lot in the last couple years. And so in lieu of there being any other kind of or very many helpful videos out there, I'm going to provide what I can provide as far as my experience. I don't know if this is a good idea or not, because there's a lot of regulations surrounding sedations and how drugs are handled and what they're used for, and I try to follow everything by the letter. I'm not going to knowingly risk the operation we have here or my relationship with the veterinarian or any of that stuff by making a mistake or doing something not the way it's supposed to be done. So I want to preface the video with that. If I am doing something wrong and somebody sees it, by all means let me know what it is and I won't do it again. I think a lot of people don't like sharing specifics when it comes to what they use for animal sedation because of fear of getting in trouble for not doing something right. Of course, I'm not a veterinarian. I don't claim to be. You should work with your veterinarian, which I work with mine to develop my plans and my procedures, as well as before I sedated any animals, I read, there's a 400 or 500 page book on animal sedation that I read cover to cover, and I tried to do my best to not only understand how to handle the animals, but also the legalities with the drugs and what's legal, what's not, and how to navigate that world as well. So first thing to understand is that anytime we sedate an animal, it's for a health reason. Whether that's one of them has gotten an injury or is sick, that's pretty easy to understand. When we sedate them to cut off antlers, that's without a doubt for health reason. Every year I see people who have bucks get killed, especially by yearling bucks that have big spikes. But even other adult bucks fight just as hard. It's just there's more antler there. They're not just straight spikes off the top of their head. So when we sedate them to cut an antler, that's very much for the health of the animal, health and well-being of the animal. Sometimes and even with the antler thing, they could run into a fence, and there's just risk with leaving the antlers on the animals. So some people don't cut them off. We have chosen to, for the most part. Unfortunately, you can't really run them in a barn very well, especially the big bucks. They're too wide, but even the yearlings, when they get stressed, they tend to fight more. And so if you run a couple yearlings into a confined space, somebody's going to get hurt. So the safest thing to do for the health of the animal is to sedate them, cut the antlers, and that's what we've chosen to do. So anyway, all that said, I just wanted to lead with that. I'm not an expert. This is just what I do. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying you should do it. Just going to show you at my own risk, I'm going to show you what I do. So to start with, sedation medications, there are a lot of safe ones anymore. Safe is a relative word, of course. They are controlled substances or class 4 drugs or something like that. So they are very dangerous, especially if someone, they fall into the wrong hands or get misused. There are a few companies that compound a lot of the medications that get used. Of course, you'll hear of BAM. That's probably the most popular, I would say. There have been some issues with that in the past, and cost, when I was pricing out different options, cost of BAM was pretty high. There is an MK mix, which is metatonin ketamine. I don't need to get into that, but there's an MK mix, an MKB. Now there's an MKBM or MKM. There's a couple other new ones in there that I'm not real familiar with. Again, I'm just going to tell you what we are doing. If we are cutting antlers off a deer, or say they cut their antler in velvet and it needs to be addressed, or they cut their leg, or whatever the case, where it's going to be, I want some pain, I don't know what the word is. I want something to help with the pain, and I want something that I can reverse fairly quickly. And for that situation, for virtually all of the situations we deal with, I use a product called MKB2. Now, the original formulation was MKB, and they also have MK. They've since come out with a essentially double strength formula. So they have MKB2 and MK2. The sedative is double strength, and the reversals are also effectively double strength. I'm not a chemist, I'm not a biologist, this is my understanding. So that's what we use. I like MKB, whether it's MKB or MKB2. I like it because I can reverse them very quickly. I can have an animal down for 5 minutes. The amount of ketamine in the formulation is less. The animal wakes up very easily. They don't stumble around, flop around, run into fences. I've never seen that with MKB or MKB2. With MK, more ketamine in that formulation, the animal needs to be down longer to metabolize the ketamine because there's not a reversal for that particular drug. So they've got to be down, and I don't remember the time, 20 minutes or 30 or 40 minutes, a pretty good length of time. So we do use MK during our AI process. Obviously that's laparoscopic, so the animal has to be sedated for that, and it's cheaper. So I will use MK or MK2 for that process. Again, that's, health of the animal. We don't want inbred, and so that's one of the ways we combat that is using artificial insemination to bring in new genetics. So now I don't normally keep the drugs in this container. They're in a lockbox, as I believe they're supposed to be, locked away with a record sheet of how much I've used on what animals, what for, so on and so forth. They're locked away. When I need to sedate an animal, I'll put them in this case that stays with me at all times. So that's the drug that we use. As far as the delivery, most of the time it's done via a dart gun, which I didn't bring mine up here, but it's partially because it's raining a little bit. It's a New Dart 389 cartridge fired. I don't think they call it a dart gun. They call it a remote RDD. Maybe that's this. Yeah, that's this. Remote drug delivery. And they call that what do they call the dart gun? They have some term for it that makes it not a gun. So back to the drug. When I was using MKB, the original formulation, what I ended up with was I'd have to have half cc darts. If I had something really small I needed to sedate, I had to have 1 cc, 1.5 cc, and then for the bigger adults, especially the bucks, a 2 cc dart. That's 4 different sizes and 4 different trajectories and 4 different power settings on that cartridge fired cartridge fired dart gun. That more than once I've messed that up, getting all the settings right. In addition to that, for those of you who don't know, the power settings aren't necessarily as simple as just adjust a number. They also have different powers of the blanks, the power loads that the dart gun uses. So brown is a very low power, green is next, and I think there's a red, but I've never had a need for it. So not only did I have to get the right dart size, the right trajectory, the right power setting, the right power load, and that was just to to get started. So one of the big advantages to the double strength formulation is I can basically use a 1cc dart for everything. So the biggest buck out there, hit him with 1cc of MKB2, in my experience, is enough that he's going to go down. You can work on him. You know, if he stirs a little bit, you can give him a little bit more via syringe, and that's just normal stuff. So, and then on the lower end, if I need to use, say, half a cc of MKB2, I don't know if this is. I'm just going to tell you what I do. I've got a couple of saline bags of saline fluid, and I can draw saline out of the bag, draw the MKB2 out of the bottle to total whatever size dart I have. So 1cc dart, maybe I think I need 0.6 cc's to sedate the animal. So I can draw 0.4 out of the saline bag, 0.6 out of the bottle of sedation drugs, use the fill needle, and fill the dart fully. So one of the things you have to do is the dart has to be either empty or full. So you don't want to shoot. I don't know what the risks are, but across the board, everything says you don't want to use a dart that is not completely full. So with that 1cc dart, I can basically, again, I hope I don't get in trouble for this, I can basically adjust my amount of sedation up to 1cc of MKB2 or MK2, which in my operation is the max I'll ever use. So I went from having to have essentially 4 dart sizes, and by the way, there's different needle lengths as well, so at least 4 dart sizes, to I keep 2. They're both 1cc. One is a 1-inch needle and one is 1 1/4 inch needle. The bigger bucks with a fat layer, 1 1/4, I think is the way to go. If you have yearlings, lactating does, things that don't have a big fat layer, or we'll go with that. A 1-inch dart is typically sufficient. There are issues if you use too short of a dart. The sedation gets into the fat tissue instead of into the muscle, which kind of causes a slow release of the drug, which typically people give the animal more because they think they're not being sedated. So they end up getting more in their system over a longer period of time. If you reverse them, the reversal can be given, and they're still absorbing the sedation medicine at the same time. So you have risk of a resedation or an overdose because you keep giving the animal more, thinking, well, it didn't get enough. It is getting enough. It's just getting it slowly through the fat tissue rather than through the deep muscle. All that to say, I've never had a dart-a-fawn, so ignore that part. I do have a few 3/4 inch needles. I hope I never have to use them. 1 inch on most animals, 1 1/4 on adult bucks, on fallow deer specifically. So that has made my life so much better. I have the 1cc dart. That means I have one trajectory table, and I've learned the gun well enough to know that 1cc, a green power load, and then there's a power ring on the back, 1 through 5. A 1 is dead on at 18 yards. A 2 is dead on at 23. So that's virtually covers everything I need to do. Basically, 5 yards to 18, I can shoot a 1 power no problem. If they're being a little bit skittish and they're out there at 23 or 25, turn it to 2 and I'm set. So virtually all I have to do, I have 2 power settings instead of 4 different darts. All these power settings different. Just that That's made my life so much better. So keep the darts full. Use saline solution, or whatever you call that, IV fluid. It's just the basic sodium chloride, no dextrose or anything like that in it. It's real easy to draw out. To me, it's the way to go. Of course, lots and lots of syringes get used. I don't reuse any of them. I just don't. They're cheap enough. The needles I use, for the most part, are 1-inch needles. I do have some 1.5s again for the larger bucks, but since I'm putting the medication right there on them, I'm not relying on a dart. Maybe the dart doesn't hit them square, and so an 1.25-inch needle, only goes in 1 inch. I don't have to deal with that when I'm giving a medication directly with a syringe. So 1-inch needle most of the time is fine. So that's what I have. Now my kit. So I'm going to go out there. I've got an injured deer. I need to sedate it. I will grab the darts. I will grab the drugs out of the lockbox. I've got these little dart container things I think I got from New Dart. They're really handy. One, I can load a couple different darts if I need to, as well as when I pick up the dart, if I find it, I can throw it in the container. I'm not worried about it poking me. So I probably have 5 of these floating around, and I do like having them. The rest in the kit. So I always have a bunch of syringes. Typically I use either a 1cc or a 3cc, just kind of depending on if I'm doing a reversal. There's a 2-to-1 reversal with the MKB, so I may need a 2cc dose. So I'll carry some of each. I also carry 2 sealed syringes that are a 25 gauge 5/8 needle. Now, these are for people. This is for if there's an accident and somebody gets darted. The answer is call the ER, get an ambulance, get them to a hospital, all those things. I would keep these in a kit. None of this is obviously labeled for people, but it is my understanding that the reversal is not going to hurt a person. It is my understanding that methamphetamine, ketamine, and butorphanol can hurt a person. That's the sedation drug, of course. So everyone has to kind of decide how they would handle a situation if it were to go badly and somehow somebody gets worst case hit with a dart, but somehow gets exposed to the drugs. And I'll come back to that. So I always keep my syringes. I'll keep 5 or 6 of them in there just in case I need extras. When I get done, I'll restock this kit so I know all I have to do is grab it. I keep a bunch of needles. Like I said, they're primarily 20 gauge 1-inch needles. I will normally have a couple longer ones. I keep a couple of fill needles. That's for the darts. Make sure that these are, I think they say on the box, but make sure you have one for the longest dart that you use. That way, if you can't use a fill needle that's too short because it won't get into the actual dart, it'll just shoot back out at you. So the length of the fill needle does matter. I have a reversal medication. I have some gloves just in case something gets messy or bloody. I will carry, right now I have 2 different kinds of antibiotics. I don't use them very often. Some people will use them every time they dart an animal. I guess you can. I don't know. Everybody has to make your own call on that one. I will spray, wound coat or a Luma Shield or whatever it's called on the dart wound and make sure it's not bleeding or got junk in it or anything or tore open. So I will do that. I have both the 2 power loads that I use. That's green and brown. Brown I don't use very often. It's for pretty close range. And then I've got this. So this is my cheat sheet. And I don't use it as much now as I did when I was first learning because I've remembered the things at this point. It starts out with some dosages, how much reversal and some of those things. I even have a list of what to keep on hand. Obviously darts and holders, a rangefinder, that won't fit in the case. I thought about getting a bigger one, but I haven't yet. thermometers, mask, blankets potentially, cold water, and we'll get to that as well. I've got sedation steps. I've got what to do if the animal doesn't go down. You know, anytime I shoot an animal, I start a timer. Not because there's a necessarily set they should be down by 6 minutes, but I've kind of learned, like, depending on the size of the animal and did the dart stay in them, and you kind of learn, like, hey, it's been 12 minutes and this animal's still walking fairly normally. That's abnormal. So maybe I need to give him some more sedation medicine. And it's got some of those steps in here and times. I'm not going to go through all that stuff. Obviously I shouldn't say obviously, there's some handling as far as like covering the eyes, use a thermometer, and that's kind of dependent on the situation in my mind. I guess we'll hit that. So we're pretty fortunate we're in Kansas, so the evenings are cool, typically cool enough where I'm not really worried about body temperature unless the animal's going to be down for a long time or they have a fever because of an infection anyway. However, if it is warm, if it's 85 degrees or 90, whatever, a lot of times I'll carry like just a spray, pump up sprayer in the bed of the mule, and it just has water in it. So when the animal goes down, if there's no risk of hypothermia, then I'll just mist the animal down. You don't want to soak them because it kind of defeats the purpose. You want that evaporative cooling. So just a light mist over the legs, over the neck, back of the head, just mist it over them. I don't think it's ever gonna cool their body temperature down to the point that it's a negative. If your ambient temperature is 80 degrees plus. If it's 60 to 80, you don't really need to worry about that, unless the animal sedates really hard or it was running. If it was stressed out when it went down, that's an issue. But we find that out by taking its temperature, and you know how you take animals' temperatures. I'm not going to get into that, but I have a couple numbers on here that I've used as kind of a guide. So I don't know, I can't guarantee accuracy, just telling you what's on my sheet. I have a normal temperature of 101.4. Goal is less than 105. 106 is an emergency. So think of that as a gauge of how you're doing, or how the animal's doing. If you see 102, no big deal. You see 103, no big deal. If you saw 103 and the next minute you see 104, now you got my attention. Maybe missed it a little. If you get above 105, pushing 106, so the cool water, a fan, if you have a way to get a fan on them with the water, that will expedite that evaporative cooling. You can also do a cold water enema. So, and we have done that. Plastic water bottle, keep them in the fridge, get them good and cold, and just, how an enema works. That's, it's not a drastic thing to do. It's not going to hurt the animal, but it's not something I've done very often. Okay, let's go to the flip side. It's wintertime, and you have an animal cut their leg, and you need to sedate them. One, try to get them into a barn, somewhere that's heated. We do keep some blankets. You can throw blankets over the top of them. Hand warmers, use lights, heated room, heated vehicle. Generally, I have on here, try to not reverse them until their temperature comes up. I don't remember the explanation for that, but that's what I've got on here. Whereas with hyperthermia, too high of a temperature, I think you want to get them reversed and moving again, because it's part of the sedation drug inhibits their ability to regulate their body temperature. So getting them up and going in that case, I think is a good thing. I'm not one to. I don't have any information on heart rates. I should. It's not something I've really had to deal with. I don't think I've got anything in here. Yeah, I don't. There's probably guidance somewhere for that, but I don't have any for you. Respiration. So I think it's that somebody told me is 60 breaths per minute is kind of like your line for, do I need to intervene or try to improve the situation? Well, the easy way to think of that is 1 breath every 6 seconds. 60 breaths per minute. 10 breaths per minute. I failed math. 10 breaths per minute. So 1 breath every 6 seconds. To me, that's easy to remember. And if I have an animal down and they take a big breath and I start counting and I get to like 7, 8, well, I'd like to intervene. I'd like to make that better. Now, on the other side, if the animal's taking a breath every 2 seconds, I need to be ready for the animal to stand up because he's, I would say, under sedated or waking up. That's been a really helpful thing. Now, if you do have one that's breathing slow, what do? I'd give them if the reversal is 1 cc of now whatever it is, naltrexone, give them 0.1. Give them 0.1 cc. Maybe if it's getting bad, maybe give it in straight into a vein. Give them 10 to 20% of the sedation dose, and see what the improvement is. I have done that, and I've only had to give them exactly that, 10 to 20%. Their breathing rate increases. I've never had one wake up from that low dose of a reversal, but I have had to use this. We had a buck that we had down, and I can't remember why, but I hit him with the same amount I do for every buck his size, and he took it really hard. He was breathing very slowly, and again, I don't know why. He was different. But it was to the point I was concerned. And so, same thing, I gave him 0.1 or 0.2 of the reversal, and that completely solved it. His breathing rate picked up to a very normal, nominal level in my experience. And so, that's a good tool. If they're under 6 breaths per minute, if they're under 1 breath every 6 seconds, you're probably good, but you need to also understand there's an opposite, and if they're breathing quickly, they're liable to stand up. And that's not terribly uncommon. I get an animal down and they're still kicking a little, or they're just not out, and I'll give them a tenth of a cc of the sedation drug, and that typically does it. So that's pretty much. Oh, I forgot about the important sheet. You'll notice all these sheets are in black. The printing is in black. The last page is in red. This is what happens if somebody gets exposed, or this is what to do, how to handle it. Again, I'm not a doctor. I'm no kind of doctor at all. But I feel like in a severe exposure, this won't kill you. This might. So take it for what it's worth. So I have basically, if you're exposed, here's the things to watch for. Wash the site, do all those things. If no symptoms within 15 to 30 minutes, no action needed. Then I've got if symptoms develop, here's how much I might give myself or someone else in that situation. Obviously call 911. Some other symptoms to watch for if the condition's worsening. If this is someone else, I guess, or you, is try to keep moving, keep walking, keep moving around. Not to the extent that if you were to fall, you'd get hurt, but that helps get the stuff through your system, I guess. And anyway, hopefully I never have to use that sheet, but it is there, as well as the needles that are smaller, as well as the syringes that are smaller needles, a little less intimidating if you ever had to administer something to yourself. So that's the kit. Let's see. Of course, we have a face mask. That's one thing, and everybody probably knows this, but if you can get, even if you have an animal that's not fully sedated, if you can get a face mask on them, they're generally lights out. Even if they're walking around, sometimes I've had to grab an antler, get a mask on them, and they'll go out. Taking away that visual stimulation really expedites the sedation So let's see, we covered the kit, we covered what we use, a little bit of how we do it. I always start a timer just as a learning reference for myself generally. Reversing. So number one, don't forget to take the mask off. That would really stink if you had to shoot the animal again after he woke up because he still had a mask on. Number two, be careful about reversing bucks in buck pens. Other bucks will take cheap shots, so a lot of times we'll reverse the animal if it is a buck in a holding pen or somewhere else. We might even leave the gate open so when he wakes up he can go out there on his own. But I don't like to reverse them out with the other bucks. It's just added risk, I think. 2 reversals with the MKB or MKB2. That is one downside, but it's not that big of a deal. One is just a 1-to-1, one's a 2-to-1. It's really easy. Generally give those in the muscle. I have given small amounts via straight into a vein. They do wake up quicker. I don't know that the long-term recovery process is necessarily better. I did give one maybe a little too much of the reversal in the vein, and he woke up very quickly, but he was extremely groggy, I would say. Well, because I gave the rest in the muscle, it took longer to absorb. So from the time when he stood up to the time that reversal had been fully absorbed, he was extremely groggy, and I was kind of worried about another buck taking a cheap shot. So give a little bit in a vein if you wanted to wake up quick, but I give the rest in the muscle. That is sedation. Hopefully it's helpful. Simplify your dart usage. That does several things. It's safer for the animal because you're not going to mess up and hit him in the guts. We didn't talk about that. You got to hit him in the muscle. You hit him in the guts, you're going to kill him. Could kill him. Super important. You can break bones with these darts. They're a very dangerous thing, to be honest. It's not something you just pick up and go and start slinging darts thinking you're going to be 100% successful. But if you can use the same size dart, that was really a game changer for me. I don't have to worry about trajectory. I know how it shoots. So that's probably my biggest recommendation, is if you can do that, do it. Otherwise, keep the supplies ready. I use way more syringes than I think I should, whether I'm giving the animal a little more sedation or a little more reversal. I misplace the syringe. Carry extra syringes. Carry syringes that always have a needle on them in case of an emergency on a person. Carry the cheat sheet. Lock your drugs up. Follow the rules. These drugs can be used by me on my animals on my farm. All 3 of those things have to be true. Not me on your animals on my farm. Not me on whatever other options I got. Not you on my animals on my farm. Me, my animals, my farm. Do that, and that reduces the risk that the regulation gets so tight that we can no longer use these as producers. So follow the rules to the best of your ability, best of your know-how. Just, there can be a high price for messing this up. That's it. This was a long video, probably boring for 95% of the people, but hopefully you might pick something up. Something, hey, we need to carry, we never thought about antibiotics. We never thought about the dart tubes. Whatever it is, hopefully somebody picks something up. The first couple of years of sedating animals was very stressful. Now it is not nearly so because of the experience simplifying the process. Our animals are much easier to dart from a mule or from the tractor. Doing on foot is a non-starter. So anyway, that's all I got for today. If anybody has questions or thoughts, you can put them down in the comments or track me down. There's various ways to do that, fortunately. But thanks for watching. Hopefully you got something out of it. See ya.